jump in and get some more detail on what we're discussing today. So what the first thing we're going to do is go through the survey. Postcard to your call. So we're going to show the results, share the results of that survey. And I think that'll be a good given that, we'll start talking about what we all envision the future to do. What do we want for her? What things do we not want? And you know, this is part of the public outreach where we're going to try to get the thoughts and opinions of folks who live here. We're going to also, once we go through some joint sessions, we're going to go and break out into some smaller groups to kind of drill down into some particular aspects of the plan. And then once we've done that, we're going to bring everyone back together and kind of summarize what the individual groups did. And then we're also going to talk about what the steps are. So I just want to start off. So I am Jamie Dagan, the chair of the PRB. And with me, we have Gretchen, you've been through it. And and we unfortunately Addison, who's also on our board, is not only in controls, she's also on the board. And I also want to introduce both Danielle and Joel. So they'll be leading many of our activities today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I have a feeling I'm loud enough. If I am not, holler. I do have a tendency to talk fast. If I'm going too fast, raise a hand, whatever, just tell me to slow down. So just kind of prepping that right now. Again, I'm Danelle Byron. I'm a community planner with Addison County Regional Planning Commission. So the question is, why are we here? So every 8 years, per state guidelines, the municipal plan needs to be updated. And we're at that time again. The last, what was that?
My pain, I'm sorry.
Okay, no. The last municipal plan was updated in 2019. So it's time to revisit what that looks like. And I just want to let you know, there are presentations with the 2-up slides. I recognize the font could still be small. I did print out a handful of copies that are full page. If you would like, if this is more important, if you want one of these right now, I have about 5 copies of the full page ones as necessary. If anyone, there's 3 to start off. That again, if you want to take notes, you want to read along, at the end of the day, I will be presenting. So I hope that you spend some time listening as well, in addition to reading my slides. So again, today we're going to be talking about, you know, what currently has been happening and what might be some ideas for the future, and talking about the broader vision for the community. It very well could be similar to what it was in the previous plan, but this is the time to talk about maybe it needs to go to the right, to the left, you know, come up with new ideas as the community continues to kind of change over time. So what is the process? So the reason I'm here today along with Julian, so we're actually, the town of Panton applied for a municipal planning grant and received it, which then they're contracted with Addison County Regional Planning to assist with the work. Previously, the last plan, you had almighty planner David Raphael, who was part of that last iteration. And of course, being a professional planner himself, I think the community and the Planning Commission still recognize the value of what he put into that. So we want to make sure that we recognize what has worked within it. And truly, it's going to be, we're just going to be updating it. You know, it has a great framework. We don't need to recreate the wheel, but it's definitely time to kind of revisit at it as necessary. You'll see us at every Planning Commission meeting moving forward. I pretty much have been at most of them since June, either prepping for this or some other conversations. So we will be talking about each kind of chapter and reviewing each chapter at the monthly meetings. Also, an important part of this community is talking about the enhanced energy plan. You currently have one in place. And again, that gets updated when the plans get updated. So we recognize, and your attorney recognizes, you have a very strong energy plan. But again, we need to kind of just revisit it for any updates that might be necessary. There's also some statutory requirements that have come up since then that we'll incorporate into energy plan and the plan itself. This is a year-long project. We have been working already since January in the conversation of it to get here. And so once the update is complete, there'll be multiple public meetings at the planning commission level as well as at the select board level. So by no means is this your last time for input. And what the plan does, it actually becomes like a guide for updating and improving your bylaws. Maybe focusing on spending priorities the community is interested in down the road, or not spending priorities. But again, we're just working together to meet the changing needs of the community. So the results of the survey. So we launched the survey the evening prior to town meeting day. I never know what to call the Monday night, town meeting day. But it was launched that Monday, March 2nd. And it was open for 3 weeks. Postcards were mailed to every residence, I think is the best way to put it. We mailed 300 postcards out. Those were mailed on Tuesday, March 3rd, informing the community of the survey and, asking folks to participate and share their 2 cents. We had that available electronically and in hard copy. There was multiple front porch forum posts about it. It was posted on Panton website. With extra postcards that were dropped off at BJ's, and I think Abby had some at Diddle and Zen. Ultimately, that outreach led to 86 responses. And I'll compare that to what it was about 10 years ago. And actually, we had an opportunity for folks to kind of say if they wanted to volunteer. We recognized the survey was anonymous, so they had the option to put their name forth. So there were 3 folks that are looking to get more involved. So this survey, like I said, it was 86 responses, only a different from 92 responses in the previous survey 10 years ago. The population is estimated, if you do a Google, it's actually 666, 666. I like to call it 665. And again, it's an estimated population data for 2025 if you look at census data. So we came to a 12.9% response rate. If we're looking at just registered voters, since the majority of folks were over 18. We had about 597 registered voters in the town, so that increased it to a 14.4% response rate. And again, looking at 2016, again, right around that same 13% response rate. Jamie, I'm going to read your thing. So Jamie, your planning commission chairperson is a data scientist profession. What is your other job? Survey researcher. So, okay. So obviously his knowledge was great to take into this. And we recognize this is a small sample size, but we did include a disclosure that using a small universe, which is the number of Panton residents, using a small universe confidence interval of 95%, the margin of error is still plus or minus 10%. 13% feels good for a small community. Unfortunately, we'd love to get 100. That was my goal, or more than that. It is what it is. But again, I think anything in that, we're still hovering in that range where we were 10 years ago. So it's, let's say, a lot of community involvement. Please do.
Getting a 10% response rate is typical when we're not throwing money at the side. Hey, we're doing the survey, we'll give you $20, $50. A lot more people would size. This is pretty good. I think that also something really controversial going on. Maybe we would see how.
Wonderful. And this is something we see in the Regional Planning Commission too, as far as across the board about this much of response rate. So it's not unique to your small community. So we're going to dive into the questions. And one thing to note, I know we put an agenda out there. We're just going to make it fluid. We go over the 30 minutes. That's fine. And I know because Julian will have a bunch of slides. So this might take longer than what's projected on the agenda. So again, feel free to get up, use the bathroom while we're chatting, get more pizza, beverages. Just definitely be comfortable. But we're going to kick off here with the first question and the second question. They were similar but different. But why do you live in Panton? And which aspects of Panton are you most important to your lifestyle? They sound the same, but they could very well be two different answers. Why do you live in Penn, for example, could be, I want close to family, but what is most important to you might be natural resources. But looking at this, so this was positioned in the sense where it was, we asked folks for their top 5 options. We had 20 things listed of what could possibly kind of rise to the top for the community. And what you're going to see here is very similar responses to both of them at the end of the day. I focused on the top 5 for each, but as you can see, natural scenic beauty always rises to the top with over 70% of the actual survey respondents saying that that's important to them, why they live here and why it's important to them. The rural lifestyle continued to be a common theme, privacy, obviously proximity to Lake Champlain, and then this last one in the top 5 was a little different. Mountain views from major roads, along with outdoor recreation activities. And mind you, we do have the breakdown of this, and if anyone was really interested to drill down, we do have the breakdown of all of that too. Then we went into challenges. How do you rate the importance of challenges facing Penton in the next 5 to 10 years? So we did this in a way where you were able to choose. It was extremely important, quite important, somewhat important, not very important, not important at all. We recognize that we wanted to kind of understand what's kind of the extremely and the quite important, so we lumped them together. I also lumped together the not very important and not important at all, lumped them together. And then the somewhat important, consider that kind of the neutral answer. So just looking at this here, the first question was, where do people feel about providing affordable homes? How important to that is folks? How important is that challenge or facing that challenge in the next 5 to 10 years? So right here, showing over 50% felt that providing affordable homes is an important challenge facing Panton today. Moving on to the second item, accommodating growth and developments. Again, this is very, it's much more similar in responses here, where the neutral, the somewhat important, not important, the very important, they're all a little over 30%. The next one was enhanced public safety and emergency needs. And with this one, again, none of them hit important, almost 40% of those that responded thought it was important, of course. And then you can see the rest of that back. Some folks, also notice somewhat important is that neutral. They're just not right in the middle. Please note that we did include not applicable or prefer not to answer in the majority of our questions. We didn't want people to feel that they had to put something forward, or sometimes they don't know how they do it. Or sometimes they're like, I don't know how I think about that question. So we did give them the opt-out. Any questions? Feel free to chime in and shout from your seat. Continuing to look at challenges. So another, the other one we talked about was maintaining the transportation system and road. Obviously, looking at this, almost 80% of participants thought that was something important that that's a challenge that should likely be tended to. Preserving the natural resources, really important to the most of the community, as you can see here, between the extremely important and quite important, making up, looks like about over 90% of those answers. Preserving the rural character, as we know, that was going to kind of go up to the top again based on question 1 and 2, where it's really important to people. And so it's a challenge, but preserving that rural character, that's important to those that live here. And then conserving working ag and forest lands, again, really important to the community as a whole. About 80% thought that was, very important. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll just talk about this preserving rural character. So when we did the survey, folks had the options of extreme, the question was, again, how do you rate the importance of challenges facing Panton in 5 to 10 years? Let's talk about preserving rural character. So there were 5 options originally, and it was extremely important and quite important. Then we had a somewhat important in the middle, not very important, and not important at all. Now, all of those to basically, to better get a better statistical understanding of the importance versus not importance, we lumped the numbers together. So I was able to lump the percentage of folks that chose number 4 and 5. And therefore, those, about combining those answered, we have over 80% of folks that. Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a better way to kind of, again, it's hard. That's why I did bring the other printouts here. If you want the larger one to see this, it will also be posted online later when you're, bored and want to need some good reading material before bed. So. So the other question we had is which topics should be addressed in the next 2 to 3 years, more emergent needs. And in this situation, I believe we had it that it was choose all that apply. In here, I brought together the top 5, recognizing these percentages do not equal 100. So just note that because folks were able to vote on as many that was important. They were able to select all that apply. So which topic should be addressed by Panton in the next 2 to 3 years? The first one is increasing recreational opportunities. Housing availability and affordability crept up again at the 40% of folks think that's something important that should be addressed. Cycling and automobile safety and just the multimodal transportation. Road sharing is something that should be addressed. Obviously, you have a lot of cyclists in the area. And of course, upkeep and maintenance on public buildings and facilities, always good to kind of keep things going, not letting things have deferred maintenance. 34% of the community of those that 34% of the respondents thought that was important. And then we have the creation of new shared community outdoor spaces. Obviously, so much of the rural landscape is privately owned. Luckily, we have Town Beach. Why am I blanking on the better name for it? Panton, what? Arnold Bay, thank you. I was like, there was a better, which is a great shared resource for everyone. But some folks have brought up it'd be great to have more opportunities for community access. Maybe it's trails, maybe it's hiking trails, walking trails, things like that. Why don't you want to work? Oh, it did it. So moving on to the next hot topic question, as we talked about the Virgin's bypass. I will start this conversation with, I am aware of the WCAX news segment that was, I think, yesterday or the day before. They talked about the bypass. We're not sure if that was talking about the true bypass and it was positioned that way, but there was also some other conversations in the State House about a toll road from Rutland to Burlington on this side of the state. It's not getting the traction. It doesn't seem to be getting traction. That huge expenditure, all the things. We recognize B-Trans is not flush with cash right now. I think the moral of the story is maybe nothing's happening right now, but again, I feel like that I would love to get some clarity on some of the components of what was said on WCAX and making sure that they're just talking about what we've been talking about this bypass for so long, or if it was something else that's been coming up in topics throughout the states. But it doesn't, I know there's folks testifying on the value of having this route on the side of the state. And again, I don't know what kind of traction it's getting, but it was a Rutland, I think, senator that brought it to the table as a conversation piece. Moving on, we're going to continue to suck town, not state, but I did want to leave with that. So these were interesting. And this is where I'd love to get some feedback or reactions if you have something. Would you support a bypass north and west of 22A? 51% of the respondents said yes. But then I also like to point out the 22% said, I don't know, I need more info. So that right there states that if the conversation was to creep up again, information is key. And just bring it to the table. Yesterday's news are saying that it's not something that's trickling to the top. But again, it was interesting to see that, I thought. Then we'll continue on this bypass conversation. Question 6 was if a bypass if the bypass was to be selected, and again, we wanted to talk about the one that would impact Panton, that option. where would you want to see development? And we're focusing on, would it be at the intersections? Would it be along the routes? And here, folks were open. Sure. Have development on the potential route in new intersections. Sure. Yes, but only along the route. Sure, but only at new intersections. So this was kind of all over the place. But then at the bottom, you'll see that, no, I do not support the bypass. Therefore, I don't support development. So we want to make sure we were able to give that community an opportunity to answer, kind of supporting the previous questions there. And then I'll keep going here. If Panton was to support development along the route, what would you want to see? Mixed use kind of rose to the top. 52% of users that opted to answer this question. They'd love to see, mixed use. So that would be maybe a mix of residential and commercial. We're not there yet, but we needed to include it because we want the town's opinion. We still want to keep this conversation going in the plan so that Panton has their stance in writing or what the community is saying right now. But as you can see here, I thought it was interesting to include some of the other comments that we were allowed folks to have their open-ended answers. A lot of none, nothing. I don't support the bypass. One person said, hey, I definitely want retail and grocery stores if we do support the bypass. It just talks about how it would kind of ruin the ruralness and that maybe that feeling. As far as I like the one where it said, no one wants to listen to teen-wheelers when you're already listening to tractors too. But again, it's good to have this as a component of this conversation, of the survey as a whole. Just to do some cross comparison, we thought it'd be interesting. I did this on the housing and on the bypass. So we did a little cross reference to see how folks responded by how long they've lived here, by the tenure of how long they've been in Panton. I guess surprisingly, except for maybe the 41 plus, everyone, a lot of guesses, we're still rising to the top in the variety of residency tenures. And then the next one is by age group. Again, wanted to see who's supporting it. Is there any kind of age distribution group that is supporting it more than another? Sure, but again, 21 to 40 age, 41 to 60, 61 to 80. Well, a handful of guesses in there. So again, nothing statistically fascinating about it, but it was something that we thought might be good to kind of look into. Any questions before I continue? I will continue to song and dance up here then, sing and dance. So we talked about emergency services in the last 3 years. We just wanted to get a feel for what that looks like to the respondents. This one was a tough one. This one I actually didn't break into percentages for some reason, but really when you're looking at the prefer not to answer, really it was not applicable. 60 plus of the folks completing the survey, only having 86 respondents, never had to use those services. So it was a good one to include, but I don't feel like we got anything wonderfully new here. And again, I kind of lumped categories. So this responsive was very responsive, somewhat, in the middle, kind of like a little responsive, and somewhat, which is that neutral again. And then I lumped the not responsives too. Overall, looks like decent responsiveness, but again, the masses have not had to use services. So moving on to housing. This one becomes a back and forth question here. And you'll see here, do you support the development of more housing in the community? 55% yes. Not a huge majority. No, 28. And then you have that 17% of, I don't know, I'm unsure. But then we wanted to understand, hey, if there was going to be more housing, what do you want to see? So we gave a bunch of options, and of course, single family always rises to the top. It's what we know, what we understand. But I was happy to see that the cluster cottage style housing also rose to the top at 47%. And an example of this, I kind of included a little picture here, and really what a cottage community is. They're becoming more popular because folks that are choosing to downsize, they're modest sized houses built on, a single parcel or, combined parcels of land that have shared infrastructure and shared community space. So some of it could be done within association funds, getting the grass mowed, et cetera. But it allows folks to stay in town in maybe in a more modest, updated house, still near their neighbors. So it's just like something you're seeing a lot more. My example is in Bristol. Bristol has, I will say, two examples, one of which is co-housing, not for everyone. But the way they were able to use these in-town lots and transform existing buildings that kept the character, and then also still continue to create these different kind of cottages and mixed use kind of areas, all with a central kind of green in the middle. Really, really interesting. And a lot of folks like that way of living. But then if you're not into co-housing where you have a shared kitchen and community tasks, there's another example in Bristol right down the way. And again, they have town water. They don't have good soil. I mean, they don't have sewer. They have good soils. But they were able to do what basically one of these, where they have that centralness, and then all the houses are kind of like single family or 1.5 style walkout basements. It worked for the topography, but it tended to be a lot of folks that were looking to downsize and just have a smaller footprint of things to clean, maintenance, et cetera. And also to get into, in that case, a walkable community. They're still over a mile down the road though. Go ahead.
Where is that located in Britain?
This one is not up. This is a picture I found just as an example. This is actually from like Pennsylvania. Yeah, no, what this is again, purely a sketch. The one is right downtown, like right at the corner of, really it's Main, East, West, South, all that. And it's pretty much, isn't it? Yeah, I guess corner of North and Main.
Near the park?
Across the street from the park. Right across the street from the park and in between like Shaw's.
Across the street?
So they took over, so on North Street, so you have where you'd enter the side axis of Shaw's, that's where the park is, sorry. The side axis of Shaw's, you have the park on this side, and then, I'm just trying to, right there, it actually sits right behind that parking lot. They took over 2 of the really large houses on North Street and converted them. And then this whole land, so they have this little path to Shaw's, they have a little path to what used to be Mountain Greens. So again, it ended up with a downtown walkable kind of community structure, all ages. None of these are a certain age restriction, but they could also look into 55 and over. That was something important. Thank you. I just needed to do that. Duplexes also came up at 21%, and then larger structures at 50%. And if housing is developed, where would you like to see it? The majority was kind of near that Panton-Virgins border on Panton Road. And those are things we could talk about as we start to develop the plan, if that would make sense for more denser housing, because as we'll continue to look at some of the zoning questions, people aren't a fan of higher density in this rural area. So. And then again, I included some extra comments about housing development. Some folks feel that it's imperative, but we recognize we still have some infrastructure constraints. And of course, it's that whole chicken egg. We need jobs, but we need houses. We need houses, but we need jobs. So that's always something we're hearing a lot about these days. And then this is the other one where we cross-compared or cross-referenced age and length of residence strictly on the, do you support more housing? Yes or no? And again, across the length of residences, the yeses still, came on top. But you could see there 9 people, 11 people, so these aren't these huge sample numbers, but the community spoke. And by age distribution here as well, little different, but again, we have in the beginning, the 21 to 40-year-olds were like, yeah, 6 of the 13 people there said yes. Go to the 41 to 60-year-old age bracket, 14 people in this case said yes, out of the other 14 plus 9 out of 23. 61 to 80, 24 out of that age cohort thought it'd be great to have more housing. And then it continued on. And then again, folks preferred not to answer. And that's I'm going to move on to short-term rentals. I knew I'd go over. Short-term rentals here. Again, so yes, no. Let's see how you felt about it. 47%, support the concept of short-term rentals. And when we say short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, Verbo, however you want to call it. And then we talked about the benefits and burdens. There are a lot of good benefits. Obviously, it's a really great income boost for residents. It provides options for more lodging options. I know when my family comes to town, I have a brother with 5 children. It's a lot of hotel rooms. So those are things that I look at too, when I look for them to come to the community. I get it. And let's see, of course, just, getting folks more exposed to the community could attract folks as well. Then we had some other comments, as far as, recognizing that it could take away, this is, again, we're supposed to be talking about benefits, but, it's nice. People were just talking about the fact that it's great that the family could stay close. Sometimes it's the only way residents could remain in their homes, et cetera. And then someone even, well, we'll get to that. Next one with the burdens. Seems like, some people have concerns about neighborhood disruption, noise, partying too loud when you're used to peaceful neighborhoods, and the housing availability. So that's kind of that back and forth. The problem is when you're using maybe these rentals for just short term, it kind of takes some of the longer term housing out of the market. But some folks might have put that ADU in purely, ADU, accessory dwelling unit, purely to have their place for their kids to stay when they come up, and then they rent it out for that extra income along the way. Makes sense for a lot of people. It really helps out their pockets, but it's that conundrum. Yes.
Are these referring to already existing structures, not building new Airbnbs?
We're just talking about short-term rentals as a whole. That could be renting out an entire house. Nothing, we're not talking about, I wasn't already nothing new being built, but that's people can. It's actually a way to increase housing units, is to look into accessory dwelling units on your property if you wanted to build new, or you have one of those big houses and you're like, you know what? I could chop off the L portion of my house and make a little rental unit here. And it could either help long term, but it's also nice that people are aging in place. A lot of folks see that space that could be potential for someone to live and caretake later on in life. There's so many reasons why someone might consider an accessory dwelling unit. If you ever want to talk about that in greater detail, I'd be happy to have a conversation about what that looks like. And again, some burdens also, one person referred to, we need a B&B tax. So these kind of questions could be something to discuss on a town level. Some towns have short-term rental ordinances. Some folks have registries for those. Some towns are recouping a registry tax or like a registry fee, annual fee for that. All things that this community could consider if that was something of interest. Zoning and land use. So again, trying to understand overdevelopment, underdevelopment. How do people feel about kind of what's been going on? And really, no one feels that it's been overdeveloped right now. Not a huge, over 60% of folks, 70% say that they disagree that it's been overdeveloped. So they're saying right on par. Right level of development, kind of all over the place. A lot agree, some disagree, et cetera. And then folks wondering about if it's underdevelopment. Well, Panton's current zoning regulations have resulted in underdevelopment. Good chunk say, I agree with that. A good chunk say, I disagree. A whole bunch of people right in the middle going, I don't really know. And I'll get through these zoning and land use and we'll be moving on to another hot topic. But so again, this was like, okay, please indicate to the extent to which you agree with the following statements. And again, this is one of those charts where it was, I really agree, I kind of agree, I'm in the middle, I disagree wholeheartedly, and I disagree a little bit. So again, I combined the agrees and the disagrees to get a better kind of feel for the data. I would like to see my area rezoned to preserve more space, to preserve more open space. Good chunk of people think that's a good idea. I'd like to see my area rezoned to allow for smaller lot sizes, closer neighbors. A whole lot of people said, heck no, at about 45%. They disagreed with that statement. I would like to see fewer zoning restrictions throughout the town. Some people agree. The majority went with disagree. They'd prefer not to see more zoning restrictions. Then as you can see, this last one down here, we'd like everything to stay as it is. And the majority, well, again, 40% over the 40% number, not really a majority, but you know, the one that tricked to the top, they agree that they'd like it to stay as they are. So all conversations the planning commission can have in them. And almost done with the zoning here. Should Panton adopt provisions in the zoning and subdivision regulations to protect the following? And again, we had lots of answers and folks got to choose what kind of came to the top. Really, it's all your great natural resources, your important wetlands, which are your class 1 and 2, your rivers and streams, the Otter Creek and Dead Creek, wildlife habitat, undeveloped shoreline, and forest land. The little bit that you do have forest here in Panton. And then someone brought out a big one, huge, very important topic. And the other is we have to protect the health of Lake Champlain as well. And someone had some other comments about cell phone towers and just other keeping things free of toxins. Oh, what is that? Yeah. And then, we talked about this, the recreation, and maybe this one could be worded a little bit more focusing on maybe a recreation kind of piece, but should Panton provide funds in the town budget with the town vote to purchase open space and conservation land? Actually, this was an identical question to what was in the survey 10 years ago. And I forgot to look this morning to see what that result was, unfortunately. But right now, they're like, no. 38% says no, 35% says yes, as far as should we have this conversation with town vote if there was an opportunity to buy some land that maybe could become a walking path or a public park or just some place for folks to gather. Again, really kind of split on this one. And that is the last of my presentation on the zoning piece right now and housing in the first half. And of course, I chit-chatted away, but I'm going to move on to Julian. Julian Larson is a PhD from UVM. He is our energy planner at Addison County Regional Planning, and he is our energy expert. So I will pass it along.
I'm just so excited to see all of these faces around here today. I think that this is a really important exercise that we are engaged in. As Danelle has pointed out, there's a lot of great material already contained within the Panton plan. So we're not going to toss the baby out with the bathwater, but it will be important to update it in substantive ways to reflect how the energy system is shifting both statewide as well as within our own backyard. One bit of framing that I would like to start with is kind of where I come from. I will be contributing significantly to the rewrite of this energy plan. And so I like to think about how my values might influence the work that I do for this community. And out of a sense of transparency, I'd like to very briefly share them with you. First, in particular, I like to engage with the idea of energy subsidiarity. Subsidiarity meaning that the smallest scale of decision making that can effectively make a decision should be the one that makes that choice. If there's a choice that we can make in our backyard, I think that it should come from within that backyard. I believe in energy democracy, and that's using popular decision making to decide what it is that we want to do. With thinking about what goes on in our backyard, I would think that it's good to have the broad decision-making capacity of our backyard present. And finally, as a catch-all, I like to think about energy justice. I like to ensure that to the best of our ability, there's not an undue or unfair distribution of burdens or benefits to people. And that helps to round out the first two, right? So if we think that we're going to make our decisions locally and we want to make decisions in a popular way, we also want to make sure that that's not inadvertently leading us astray. I make this point because I think that my perspective influences my work. I think that your perspectives likely influence what you've had to say as well. And I think that when we get to those deeper levels of not just what I think, but why I think, we get to a greater level of awareness. And I think that this community development event that we have today is exactly the right venue to get to that deeper level of awareness. So for folks that ultimately come and check in with me on the energy topics when we break out, I would love for us to kind of dig into that rich dialogue of not just what we think about the energy system in our backyard, but why we think what we do. Moving on to the element of the survey that focused primarily on energy, I thought this would be a really interesting idea to attempt to replicate a different survey that was conducted in 2023 titled Vermont Weighs In. And it focused more tightly on electricity than energy more broadly, but it is a good way to test sort of our survey as well. Are we seeing similar trends being revealed in this survey that were revealed in a statewide survey? And to the earlier point about sample size, this Vermont survey only ended up talking to 700 Vermonters. So that we were able to get as many as we were in Panton alone, I think is also a positive indicator. So what we have in our collapsed bins, where we took strongly agree and agree and merged them into agree, and disagree and strongly disagree that have been merged into just disagree. We see very similar patterns to what we've seen across the state, with over 80% of respondents agreeing that affordability should be one of the key principles that we have in our energy system. That figure from the other survey was 98%. The next element, we need to be able to access the energy need when we need it, is a reliability question. Can we access the electricity or the energy that we need when we need it? That comes out at 97% agree in the Vermont Weighs In survey, and again is pushing 90% in our survey as well. These are really positive indicators that we might actually be measuring with our survey what we think we're measuring. We have as well impacts on natural resources, again, pushing well above 80%, and that tracks with the Vermont Weighs In survey as well. Rounding out, we have strong support for an energy system that helps to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, as well as one that is renewable, that favors energy independence, in which people can have access to electricity that they generate themselves. And then a split result at the final question of it's important that our energy comes from within our town. And this, again, tracks pretty well with what was said around the state by other Vermonters, that they had a 60% preference that electricity comes from within the state. And we have a much, again, weaker rating of neutral or agree for whether it should come from within our town. And so what this indicates to me is that the survey that we did in our backyard was actually conceptually a very strong survey. It is matching what other Vermonters surveyed have said about these topics as well. And in part, the reason why I wanted to ask them is because they can help us reveal what sort of principles should be guiding our energy plan moving forward, right? Our core principles that we should be thinking about, in all likelihood, are the ones that are most popular. Right? Affordability and reliability are some of the kind of base threshold foundational issues for energy. The lights need to come on when we need them, and they don't need to cost us an arm and a leg to do so. That we have few natural resource impacts tracks very well also. It makes us think, are we being considerate enough of our backyard as we go to have different types of economic development, of which energy development is, that takes place there. And it is important to our community to have energy sources that have less of an impact on climate change, that are renewable, and that we want folks, if they so choose, to be able to generate electricity in their backyard to support themselves. That tracks with several other survey results that I'll elaborate on in a moment. That energy comes from within our town. Again, a bit more of a mixed result. I think that this likely stems from the notion that there is quite a bit of energy development that has already taken place within Panton. And so some questions within the community of just how much more is right now. This is just a snapshot of this particular moment, and so it doesn't necessarily indicate where we're going on this issue. But from my perspective, it indicates a bit more trepidation about particularly larger scale developments, which we'll see from other survey results. For example, residential scale, which has traditionally been described as below 15 kilowatts, but the state is in the process of changing their description. And so we upped it to it having a 25 kilowatt capacity in this survey. But for roof mounted projects, again, maybe this is that energy independence support, but we have pretty significant support for solar canopies and roof mounted solar projects that support erodes somewhat for ground mounted solar projects. But fairly strong support for new wind projects as well at that residential scale. But when we start to move to larger scale energy developments in our backyard, if you will, if they can put it on a roof that would technically qualify as that scale, or in a canopy style project, folks have a bit more support. But once we start moving it into the open spaces, as we can see in that third figure, that support begins to erode. There is support for, interestingly, significant support for new biomass projects as well as new renewable gas projects in the community at the commercial or utility scale. Less support for wind projects at that scale, although there was support for smaller sized wind projects by comparison. So again, less a question of technology and more a question of size is the way that I would interpret that. And then I thought this was a really interesting question as well. So what is the largest size that you're willing to accept, essentially, is the type of question that we're asking here. And within a push of up to 25 acres or less than 10, 26 to 50, we have kind of significant shares of the population clustered within at least being willing to accept some scale of relatively reasonably sized commercial or utility scale solar, for example. I might anticipate that about 20 acres is enough to host a 5 megawatt nameplate capacity facility. And so with that as sort of an idea in our mind, there is actually quite a bit of support for facilities, even up to some of the largest that have already been deployed in our area at that 5 megawatt capacity. So this isn't a situation where the community appears to be saying no writ large to new energy developments, but they've got some ideas about what those energy developments might look like. They're a little bit smaller. They're on preferred sites like on rooftops and in solar canopies. But if there is a perhaps particularly well-sited facility, there is support for even up to what I would classify as a utility scale energy system. And that pretty much covers what I have to say about energy from our survey.
Questions? Don't worry.
There'll be plenty of time.
Yes.
Don't worry.
Voices will stop speaking shortly, and then we want to hear yours. So giving you a heads up. Thank you, Jolien. So yeah, just circling back to some, basically we put the demographics at the end. We didn't want to bore people at the beginning of the survey with a whole bunch of rote questions, but it's important to know who our audience was. So this is, I'm not going to lie, this one's a little tough to read. I would have loved to spend more and more time on it yesterday. But in regards to what is your age? So 47% were between 61 and 80 years old that completed it. I'm just going to go with the majority here. How long have you lived in Panton? Hold on, I want to make sure I could even read them. The majority, that was actually kind of all over the place. The whole slew of folks as far as how long folks have been in the community. 26% were in the 21 to 40 year mark. Do you own or rent? The majority of folks own, 5% rent, 5% chose not to respond. And are you a full or part-time resident? So the primary of folks that opted to take the survey were 91% of full-time residents. We did have a few part-time, and then some folks preferred not to answer as well. How many people are in your household? The majority here of 55% are two-person households. And do you live with and or care for older generations in your household? I think this might have got a little tweaked. I feel like, I mean, it says 83%. I'm not real, that answer doesn't seem to, I don't know if we asked it the right way. No. I don't know if we could necessarily ask it the right way to understand more for those that were true caretakers. Then we wanted to understand, how are you involved in the community? There are so many opportunities and pretty much the same quantity opportunities exist no matter how big the town is. So when you have 666 residents, there's a lot of roles to fill, but we wanted to get a gauge of, what folks have been doing. So, obviously folks currently serving in town government, participate in community events, or they participate in town meeting. And I love the others, with the survey, when you leave things open-ended, it's always fun to get a little humor. So not even humor, it's serious. I pay taxes. That's why I'm involved. Or I'm a blood donor. Honestly, we need more. So it's really great. Or I vote. Absolutely. That right there is a civic responsibility worth noting. So. And there's a lot of folks that I served in the town for years in the past, held lots of different, roles in there. Someone even mentioned that they spent a lot of time at the Bixby, and that's where they end up spending their time because of their young children. Then we did 2 open-ended questions. What do you like least? What do you like most? So grateful for Logan to actually put this together for me. It was just a different way of really kind of understanding, because we have these 65 responses. And so when you're looking at 65 paragraphs, it's a lot to take in. So Logan ran some kind of just get an idea of the theme of what we were seeing, sort of what they like least. And so we saw a lot of agricultural pollution, runoff, environmental harm, going down to traffic, speeding, road safety, truck traffic, lack of amenities, service, lack of recreation opportunities. And then as far as anything above 10, the last one, community conflict, gossip, divisiveness, politics. There's always going to be differences of opinion, so sometimes that happens. But then we look at nuisance items, and I remember someone wrote in mosquitoes. That's all they had. That was the worst thing about Panton mosquitoes. That's pretty darn good. Can't really control. We're not controlling that right now. I think some communities do have to control it. So luckily, that's not something we're talking about. And of course, you saw other things about public safety, Arnold Bay, beach use conflicts, etc. So there's a whole slew of them. But then, what do we love about PAN? What do folks really love? And so what I did was what's known as a word cloud. The answers, the big words, the bold words that are the largest, those are the ones that were repeated uniquely in many answers. So example, if someone said views, 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 that didn't count as 3 views. That's 1 view. So then looking at someone else's answer, they said view. I'm just using that as an example, but lake, a lot of people said lake. That's huge for them. Privacy, quiet, peaceful, beauty, access. And then all these other words, if you really want to get into it, they may not make sense exactly where they are, but at the end of the day, you're talking about vistas, and you have this word like, okay. But again, it's all about focusing on the ones that really come to the front as what folks see as really what they really love and big positives about the community. Questions? Because that is the end of the survey presentation. And now we're going to do a little group exercise where really we want to hear your voices. Oh, yeah. So what I would like to do is move on. We guys help me get the 3 boards over here. Right here. You're perfect. Actually, I love how I put it in front of the board, even though, okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is the vision. It's something I mentioned in the beginning. Your community has had a vision, obviously, in every plan in this existing plan. The vision right now is 7 paragraphs on 1.5 pages of text. That's great. There's a lot brought into it. But we really want to see if there's any changes. And the way I decided to do this, actually, I want to get that map too, Joey. We'll get the Panton zoning map and we'll include that over here as well. And I just want to talk about the vision for a little bit. So successful municipal plans, because again, that's why we're here. Woo, sorry. Are shaped by a strong public process. The survey, us coming together, the monthly planning commission meetings that are also available online if you want to enjoy from the privacy of your home. And we recognize not everyone's going to agree. But at the end of the day, it's about finding common ground between the community members. And it helps to build civic health, encouraging open, respectful dialogue and communication when opinions differ. So what I thought would be a good way to kind of talk, kind of start to get the community involved, you all that came today, is to talk about what might be important to maintain. What's important to you that might be a good idea to evolve, and then things that can be transformed. And so there's no wrong answers. Absolutely, this is the brainstorming. So what you might say might sound silly, but it might spawn another idea in someone else's head. And again, we want to talk about, so when I say this, maintain, we want to identify areas such as working landscapes or natural features or neighborhoods that are good as is. We just want to maintain status quo, looking great. And when we talk about areas, it's not only about things on a map, but it's about the values. So it doesn't have to be this tangible component. And then there's areas or ideas or concepts that might need time to evolve. It's been 10 years or, gosh knows, some of the things might have carried over from the plan 10 years prior. So are there specific areas in the community or, that could have great potential that we might want to look into, or they already exist and they just have potential to just be a little bit more. And that's why I'm saying, so our red is like maintain, red, like, stoplight colors, that's maintain, evolve, the middle, just maybe a little bit, but then there's the transform. So areas that are appropriate for complete metamorphosis. Maybe you're going to say, heck no, we like it the way it is. But maybe it's focusing on underutilized parcels. I mentioned, contaminated sites, new neighborhoods, things like that could work right there. Especially now that you've kind of heard about some of these other things. Let's see what you all think. So we want to focus on specific areas as well as things that can't be mapped. So I brought the Panton zoning map as well. And let me get all of mine. I got markers, I have stickers, I have lots of things. But I really want to share the conversation to you all. And if I have to, I'll call on people like the planning commission members. I will. And we'll see where we go with this, We weren't sure the size of the audience. We weren't sure, how you never really know. And so it all depends on the folks that show up. So I'd love to hear from y'all. It's not too forward, but I hope you're not all in food coma yet. I have stickers here also. So if you're like, oh, that corner, we need to evolve, what have you. Or, for example, there's been talked about maybe more development along Panton Road. What does that look like to you? Should that go all the way to BJ's? Maybe that's where it stops, because then the rest could continue to be the rural Panton that you know and love. But you might want a little more industry, a little more housing. Those are all just things. It's not about my opinion. It's not about what comes out of my mouth. It's about what comes out of your mouth. I'm just giving you kind of some talking points to get the juices rolling. And if you need to stand up, walk around, get more pizza, soda, say the word. But any ideas to kick this off as far as, is anything different than what you saw? I mean, we could start here with maintain. We want to maintain, go ahead, Logan. I knew this was going to happen eventually. Okay. Maintain existing Panton zoning.
Not saying it's really wrong.
I don't think it's not about right or wrong. This is where you get to have a voice. This is just ideas. Red doesn't mean wrong. So just keep that in mind. Again, are there areas worth transforming? You know, we've always talked about this Four Corners. We recognize it's privately owned. You're not in control of what someone's going to do with their land. But things change over time, and that's about the vision. So maybe it is, helping to, make this more walkable. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. What else you got? Gretchen? Yeah, oh, that. Oh. Oh, you see, four? Well, no. I know this yellow might not work.
Yeah, see it.
I knew that was gonna be a problem. They get blue. Oh, no. What?
I keep seeing.
Scott, do you want that?
The free beaches there, the people who just like shit down there. So they put the porta potties and all,
So maybe it's into a ball.
improve, they, animal. I was bigger, everybody wants to go down and swim. Maybe put in some more picnic tables, grills, whatever. It seems to be a local thing to do. The local can out of state.
And now you guys need to chime in. Kyle, do you wanna, I'm not sure what the status is with the grant opportunity, just to, we
Yeah,
can share.
There is a grant that the town got to improve Arnold Bay. And part of it will be an improvement to the dock infrastructure. There's gonna be a swim platform installed in the beach. There's going to be a handicap parking area. There's also going to be some new picnic table bench kind of things. And then there's also some improvements to the environmental impact that the steepness of the hill has. And so the town is we're on track, everything's great, but we think the American Museum is going to be doing another archaeology study to make sure that we're not moving, serving the new signage for historical and cultural impact, and just some slight improvements, but yeah, the town received almost $90,000 grant funds to pay for the project, so, this summer. June, yeah, and this year is the 250th anniversary of Benedict Arnold burning the fleet at Arnold Bay, and our hope is that the project is completed by October, and that been approached by a historical reenactor who would like to reenact it, and his group of reenactors, and so we need to have some going men. Again, right, planning right now, but fingers crossed, we'll come into Arnold Bay and set off cannons and.
Will there are some more boats?
They might have pyrotechnics. So there will be with one of the landowner's permissions, there will be improvement to the parking that's already existing in the top. And then there will be a handicap parking area for one car and handicap at the disability access bottom, actually at the boat grid, as well as a new disability accessible path. So, well, not a portable, but a bathroom. It's smaller than a single porta potty.
People swim, it's a very small beach there, kind of both sides, where the tide's going, the boats. Is there any way to like add more gravel?
No, lakeshore permitting, the state is very nervous about permitting for interfering with the natural lakeshore. And so the things that we're doing are in fact set above the watermark necessary to not trigger many of those conditions. Which is why we have to get an archaeology study, but otherwise, a swim platform will hopefully expand the swimmable area into the water itself, further off on the beach side. We're also going to be protecting the beach from people driving their vehicles like right up there, as has happened in the summer, with the installation of some stones to keep you drive their car right up where those trees are.
Are they gonna ever put a guardrail going down that hill?
No, but it's too tight for guardrail and too steep, and the runoff control will hopefully mitigate the issue where that whole thing's gonna be created on both sides of the road to prevent storm runoff from tearing out underneath the road and bringing, runoff both silt and phosphorus and other things into the lake. So hopefully we're going to create some areas where the water's going to slow down. Yeah,
That was a long time coming. I
Yes.
believe David Gabriel started the
Yes.
site plan concept way back when, and then continued within the Addison Regional Planning Office, hoping to get through some funding through some clean water service provider actions and for that helped pay for the kind of identification planning of it, but ultimately they didn't get the implementation funds. And at that exact time, when shortly after they were not able to get the implementation funds, the Lake Champlain Basin grant became available, and it was perfect for our community because it really not only about water quality, but also about history. And so it just made in the cultural,
and
cultural importance
and recreation.
and recreation.
They want more
It
people.
all, yeah. So they were rightfully suited for the grant and help the Maritime, with the Maritime Museum, because they could have had that on their own, it really worked out well. So, and more funding than what, again, it's all about figuring it out, but at first, town thought they didn't need as much, but when they started running numbers and updating estimates with the engineers, numbers went up as always, but the grant was not. So I mean, the finances were met. So yeah, so stay tuned, and that's why again, it's something that I've been talked about, and it might not answer every problem. We're doing a very still small area. Because so much of the village is privately owned, and so no matter what, even on that town beach, you are gonna hit property values.
Yeah, that parcel only is less than an acre, basically, if you use this. So
How much lakefront?
I'm not 100% on the actual lake, several hundred feet, but the actual parcel itself is less than an acre, because it includes all the area on top of the hill as well, and the right of way road that goes down there.
I think the town should be more aware of the historical significance besides Benedict Arnold. There was also John Brown's body went down Adams Ferry Road one time, and he was his body was being transported back to North Elba, New York. It's buried. And also, about 20 years ago, somebody knocked on my door, and they were writing a book about a Panton resident named Harriet Bishop. She was born in Panton and what was it, 1817. Her father started the church, and she was into the Christian. Well, I'll just read a little bit. I took off the computer.
Great.
Harriet Bishop is known as the founder of St. Paul's first public and Sunday schools. That's in the state of Minnesota. In the 1840s, she led a vanguard of white middle-class Protestant women who sought to bring moral order to the multicultural fur trade society in Greek territorial Minnesota. Bishop was born in Panton in 1817, deeply religious, school, and exemplified values. She spent 10 years teaching in Essex County, New York, right across the lake. She, at age 30, she left by the canal, the Erie Canal, got into Lake Ontario, and then eventually Mississippi River, down the Ohio River, up the Mississippi to Minnesota. And she was the first settlers, and she started a school, and then the first school ever in Minnesota. There's an elementary school named after her. There's an island, a state park, named after Harriet Bishop. There's a paddle wheel though.
Oh.
And I met a guy from Minnesota at a Rotary meeting, and said, "Oh, I'm from Minnesota." I said, "You ever hear of Harriet Bishop?" He goes, "Oh yeah, yeah." And here, she was born in this town and she's quite famous. So
I read, so here, I'll do some research, maybe we can add a little section of some historic people.
And that's where historical significance, more PR, more press about it. Bring it to the top of the table. That's what you know what I
The
meant. by that.
signage that Lake Champlain Maritime would be not only Benedict Arnold, but also I made sure when we meant that it was the other history, Benjamin Franklin being short Arnold Bay in 1706, going back. Peter Ferris, they ran some of the first ferry boats in the, Adams Ferry. I mean, Peter Ferris had a farm over. So there's a lot of non-Benedict Arnolds that we want to see.
Not Benedict Arnold. What else? Go ahead.
About historical, this is back to, excuse me, I'm gonna go, Arnold Bay, Road, and Arnold Bay, Town Beach. We live on Lake Road, and at 5:30 to 6 every Saturday morning and Sunday, you see New York trucks coming with their boats, going up and parking. And we've taken many walks, and they take over the whole part of, the top above the water filtration plant, around the bend and going down that road. I'm not saying that, your New York people shouldn't be coming, but they do seem to monopolize. And when others come, there's nowhere to park. And also, we were thinking about a tax incentives of why aren't we getting some tax? And in terms of their parking there, they're monopolizing it all day until they come in with a vote at 8 o'clock at night. So Panton residents can't park there or other, it just seems odd to us,
She went, go over the bridge. Lots of places parked down there. Not trying to get them on a pan.
state parking or boat launch.
Right,
Well, yeah, and it's free.
Great.
right.
Yeah, so there has been talk about permitting, because it had to be a town resident to be able to use it for free, and if you weren't a town resident, you had to buy a permit.
Yeah, and you have to be leasing it.
Yeah, enforcement's always the hardest.
Well, there's a lot of-
There's pros and cons about having. Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
some people just know stuff. It's never gonna be all one way, you're never gonna get all the people that like it, or
Yeah.
all the people are gonna dislike it.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of people from out of state that use. So we really, different commerce to the town.
Yeah.
So there are pros and cons. of it.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great game, so I can go just go out and I can only go with certain friends. Well, it was just an idea, it's a way to bring fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down as another option, as far as parking permits. These are just ideas.
I
What else?
gonna go with the biking thing.
Which one?
Biking, we need better biking side of the road, and West Road, that's kind of what the big.
Sorry, is this 34? Thank you.
Okay, so we are, yes, what is the topic going here, biking?
Yeah.
Which is not really pretty bumpy for bikes, but if that could be improved somewhat.
Yeah.
And a lot of the biking people could go down West Road, and do kind of a roundabout there, and after their biking, all these big biking tours.
Yeah.
You go down Canton Road, that might sort of be a detour, but it has to be improved for bikes pretty well. Well, yeah, different mountain bikes, it's not all over.
And then shoulders.
Shoulders, yeah.
Signage to.
Exactly. And then obviously expanding in the roads, especially when you're getting into private property and you're gonna have to, it's a lot, and I think they've looked into it. I mean, it has, it's been part of the Champlain bikeway now for a long time. And that's obviously continues down the beyond just Addison County. But yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes, but my biggest fear all the time is not just can't anywhere. I'm still going to the speed limit or below, and there's a blind turn, and, so there's always, there's pros and cons, and also just as a side note, there's a bike walk possible out of the county that I'm also kind of a technical advisor on. We meet, second Mondays every month, I can have to give you more information if you wanna
kind of join the community-wide conversation and walk. It's focused on transportation as well as recreation and health. So just saying another little pop up for another organization. Yes.
I just love to that point, I'm wondering what is the status of the area from Third Bridge over to, now. Because.
Which one's Third?
Well, that's not the way, yeah, well.
He's talking about South Road.
South Road, right? Yeah.
I know, I'm sorry, I've only been here 20 years. Right.
No, we didn't get a grant, and it is a trail, you can go on it anytime you want, it is not improved. The town is not required to improve it or maintain it, but you can use it, I use it on a weekly basis.
It's a public easement, correct?
Yeah, it's-
On own land.
Town road.
It's public easement, so.
So you can walk it,
And you walk it,
you can walk it,
years ago.
I'll get for over here.
if you pull it up on the Google map or on the Vermont Art, GIS map, you can see where the person is. It's just to the south of the trees, yes, to the south of the trees on the West Road area of it. People think that it's all treed in, it's not, you can walk
Could you bike it?
it on a mountain bike.
Well, I'm thinking that this would be a way to bicycle. Maybe get.
Avoid, yeah.
Doesn't it dead end at the creek?
But,
Does it dead end at the creek? Or somewhere, well, it just looks like, yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to spend too much time because it's so, we have it as a talking point and I put it on this.
it doesn't dead end, it continues on to West Road.
Oh, okay, we just talked about that, yeah.
Yeah.
So then the portion of that was,
I mean, you get onto state land out there at Dead Creek, it turns in from Panton
yeah,
land into the Dead Creek.
that's what I thought, yeah, so to me, I'm dead ending it then. Yeah.
Fishing sites that are usually
Pulling to the creek totally.
All the way.
Yeah, you just cross the bridge.
The street here,
South is on because the fishermen and the South Road, right, they just leave their nobody there. These, you know, this is. Hold on, I just want to make sure that we're also focusing and kind of listening, but. There's my house right here. And it's very. Yes. Cleared up. Yes.
Yeah, right. Nobody knows, well, people know about it, but it's.
I know, what about a sign that says pack it in, pack it out, and you see it apart? Yeah, it's just hard, yeah, sometimes it gets in the maintenance and things like that. Sign. No, I understand, people are like. I think. Yeah.
Big bullet.
But I want to hear what the people say, so, especially because it might be fun, something else. We could definitely, the fight time at the end, we could definitely focus on certain topics. And we can continue to keep this going. We have another phase of different hot topics, and we'll see kind of naturally how this continues to progress. So not to interrupt, but yes, so the recommendation or the idea to evolve our really great fishing spots, so adding something to limit the trash, permanent garbage cans, something like that. Maybe a sign, sometimes it's easier unfortunately because garbage cans require maintenance and I don't know. If that's a public works responsibility or not, you know, obviously all of that, you know, overflowing and bears coming and all these other things too. So,
Yeah, so that's all great, and that's why we're gonna add that because it is a great point, because that's our waterways that we need to protect. If we're garbage nearby, then we're garbage in the water.
Those are one of the things, fishing, biking,
Yep.
recreation, you know, picnickers and all, and when you're a picnickers, you're looking for a pleasant spot to have either a little table, porta potty, those are simple needs.
Yeah.
But if you have that, you're gonna bring people rather than messy fishermen, or you go fishing, or just stop there and look down at the creek, there's garbage, littered everywhere, and if there was a simple garbage can. No, there's an RFA, but I'm talking about.
She's not gonna have to, like, a hotspot spot. Okay. And what, hold on a second, okay, you just said your hand raised first?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to the maintain.
Yep.
Which is maintain the rural character and open.
Perfect. Even though we've already heard those words in the thing, this is why this is here too, because we want to hear it again. Okay, Diane.
I don't know that this fit. Categories. I love, it's not in Turkey Lane. At the end of Turkey Lane. Is that town property?
Yeah, Turkey Lane is deeded access for Panton, but not deeded, it is a town road from Lake Road to the high water mark of Lake Jim. Now, Turkey Lane has a private road component that leads off about 0.6 miles away from the high water mark of Lake Champlain. The town, the select board, and the E911 coordinator are still developing a plan on what to do for that last little bit. Because we're trying to work with the surrounding landowners to make sure that everything is amenable, and but ultimately it's going to be probably walk-in access to the lake kind of thing. We did look for some grant funding to be able to improve it. That's probably not in the cards right now, but it will be. Stay tuned to the select board because the issue will be solved pretty, within the year probably. Yeah.
Pizza, beverages, join us.
What? You get to quote meetings.
Cool about this.
The pizza, you coming out.
Well, I threw this up here, then I wasn't sure where to put it, I just said Turkey Lane, public, private, more info, TBD. I'll put it in the middle, I figured. Go ahead, yes.
Under evolving, this is something that I don't know the percentage of older folks or mid getting into older age, but as we all know, it's pretty car dependent. And I'm always saying Addison County Transit, but they changed it to
Tri-Valley Transit.
they'll go to the factory, turn around and go back. So they do not come, other than SSTA or whatever the special.
Yeah, if you have special needs, you can call, do the call.
And I know I've sat on before a few committees on transportation. It's a big, big issue in terms of how we could expand in the future for folks who no longer can drive,
Yeah.
choose not to drive for whatever reason, to some type of access in this area.
Yeah.
We are virtually cut off other than driving 8 miles.
Yeah.
If you can't drive to Virginia.
And it's not unique here either. I know Shoreham and
Right.
the other ones are having the same
Right.
conversation. And unfortunately, it comes down to population density and all these other pieces. You have a reason to come out here.
Grants, and I don't.
Yeah.
Tri-Valley Transit offers dial for everyone. And you can call and schedule it.
Because I didn't type that, so that's something new.
In the last couple of years, I've been really since COVID, they really stepped that up. And I actually met the Tri-Valley Transit coordinator, and that was part of the plan. And we had a great meeting with the transportation advisory, planning 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And so, yeah, there's, I was actually, one of the considerations is we were going to stop at the parking lot. So,
Yeah.
but they do offer dial ride, and you should look into that, because I'm sure that's, they don't low range, but. Sure, well, anyway. Yeah. Well, and the town contributes financially to try to, and those are through our community, through the board of recreation. Dial ride. Yeah.
And also people are referring to transportation as a place to socialize too, actually. There are folks that I've heard that there's someone that gets on the bus and just rides it all day, just for socialization. It's like more of a maybe Middlebury focused human. I forget exactly what it was, maybe Bristol or Virgin. But it's a reason to see people and get out of the house that day, even if you don't have that errand to run or what to do, just go for the ride. So again, that's something really, it's just a different way of looking at it just as transportation, as some people are really just looking for that human connection too. And that's a way to serve, especially those that are a little more homebound than others. Jamie?
This is just more, I think, something that benefit biking and other things like this, shoulders.
Yeah.
It doesn't even necessarily have to be paved over, but some.
I'm gonna throw this over here too, because it's a kind of start from scratch thing, but I think to get the proper bike, I think it might be. It's still this.
Well, of course, I guess I'm thinking more like class roads, but more of the safety issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, safety perspective. What else? Hey.
Bike rack that Arnold, like, you know, you're talking about business bike rack, because they're the bikers that stuff, periodically. And if they could walk their bike, they can walk in areas around there, because we walk around that whole area, sometimes, and we don't want to be going too long. There's other people that are coming in and out.
Yeah.
So maybe a bike rack.
Yep. Yes, I threw that in, I threw it right up here.
Yeah.
What else do we have? Back table. 3 planning commission members being like, talk to you later. Yes, good.
Well, yeah, it's not. Yeah, but, you know, we had a number of meetings, a picnic and a whole day of celebration for family. And it was really fun, and it would be nice I think it really fosters community, and it would be a nice thing to, now we've got this town hall, it's all. And it would be nice to plan on something like that.
Yeah.
Yearly basis, possibly.
Exactly, an annual community event, and that was something we included as an option. And the survey, we mentioned it, it just didn't rise up to the top, but it was still something that was touched upon, because it would be great to have that communal reason to meet your neighbors, come see each other. And it just, again, creates that, just the community rapport that everyone often really loves about the community. Yeah. But do it this time.
What else? Anything else? Any other ideas? Any areas? Any other thoughts? We have other things to go on to, so I'm not ready to end this unless you are. Okay. Well then, if we have continued thoughts, I will leave the markers nearby. You can just add what you want. Actually, what I'll do is probably take these pages off, put them on a back table. So the next thought we had, around this time, was to break into hot topic groups. And again, we can make this evolve depending on who's here and what people gravitate towards. But our thought was to have 3 different breakout sessions. Let's figure out where they go. And it could be hot topic number 1, energy. We recognize how important that is keeping that conversation going in your community, the fors or the against or whatever it is. Number 2, housing, which could include zoning conversations as well. Number 3 could be a kind of a Lake Champlain and natural resources. That's what we said. Something else, natural resources. Recreation and natural resources. So we have thoughts that we could break into 3 groups. We have 3 moderators. We have 3 note takers. But let's see, I guess, I don't know, I'm just gonna kind of take the vibe from the group. Do we have a lot of folks? Let's see, go ahead, you want?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, we have some critical mass for each of the 3 groups, because another idea would be.
One at a time.
Talk about.
I think that's great. Yeah, because that's the thing. We wanted to kind of feel how this was gonna check out the audience, quantity of people. So what we can do, and then
So I'm just gonna put these double cover for now. That's able to see cold water meander. If you don't want to get up, look like that, get up, that's what. Get more pizza, it's way cold. I won't have this.
Nice. I'm happy now using more voices to hear my own.
Well.
Good, but okay, let's bring it all back. And you can bring the, like, so we're gonna move on to the hot topics. And I told Jolie and he'll take the floor first. We're gonna talk about all three hot topics. But I want to give energy the time that it should have, because it is an important conversation to be had. I will switch. And so what we want to do with this section, originally the thought was breaking the 3 groups. But we have a good amount of people in the hall, or a small amount of people that are all going to talk together, because we don't want anyone to miss something of interest. So we had a plan where we had 3 different moderators, 3 different scribes. I think some people are off the hook. So I will assist Julian, and you know, what we want to talk about here is, we know we have important topics in the community. And we can talk about the problems or the concerns all day long, but what about the actions? What are the actions? We recognize there still might be conflicting opinions on, do we need more housing? Do we not need more housing? Then there's the energy piece and solar panels. Then, of course, we talk a lot about natural resources and recreation. So I'll leave this one towards the end, since a lot of our conversation in the last session really focused on that. So I figure I'll give Julian his time. We'll touch upon housing. We'll see else what we have. But continue to eat cold pizza and delicious brownies. Really appreciate it. A lot of people, yes, please. They were coming in party places, so it's like one slice is like half a year. So have a piece. So, thank you. If anyone take it off, thank you. Okay, Julian, you have the floor. I will write as necessary, whatever you want me to do.
So, to lead off with my conversation, and perhaps this will be something that's helpful for discuss. I wanted folks to think about just for a brief moment why you're here. You know, it's obviously a beautiful Saturday, and you've chosen to give us it's worth of your day. Try to figure out what is going on in your community and what will so just take a quick minute to think amongst yourself internally. What brought you to this conversation today? Why did you choose to be here? And we might popcorn a little bit on this. We might not, depending on time, but I want folks to think about what motivated them to join this conversation. So let's take a quick minute to do that. You don't have to share, you can if you like, but I'm thinking about that motivations question again. Right.
They had to break that lovely silence. The zoning.
Hired in July 24. Live in a home that was designed for 2 adults and 2 kids. 2 kids are now adults and gone. And I've started to think about downsizing.
So this is more housing related,
Well, actually, it's kind of both.
energy and housing.
I think
Okay.
housing and Zoom.
Okay, got it. Well, we're gonna focus on energy to start, but I don't want to discuss the
sorry.
thought.
I think it's okay. I think since we're opening up a big group.
I'm okay with that too. But I will,
But I think this will be a helpful.
perfect, sorry, mine is wrong to begin with. So are you talking about kind of big house, less people?
Well, I'm thinking it might make sense down the road for us to downsize, live in a smaller accommodation, less maintenance, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm thinking, what can we do with the property that we have?
Wanting to stay in place, liking the community that you spent so much time in, that you raised a family in, but needing to have the infrastructure that supports that long time decision making, as well as to help get you there, right? Because it's not just, is there a type of residence or a property or a way to build it. And supporting the broad community needs, bringing in the next round of families that could use a family size home, perhaps. What is it about Panton that makes you want to stay as you
continue to live there. Yeah. What makes it fun? I'm sorry to go down.
Well, but here, long. So our little 10.1 acres, the question is, down the road, would we consider slicing that in half?
And those are conversations we had, we had two folks over here, one said, keep going this, or also, maybe larger parcels that option, if we could subdivide, Gretchen knows. Putting that together, but that could also be the future parcel for a child or a grandchild, or just simply 100,000 cash. Yeah, Susan, that's an example, probably is more right now. But those things really are helpful, especially as taxes increase. We're in these old homes that don't have the best, no matter what you do, you can't insulate enough. It's hard to see what that envelope is.
Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. I think it would be really nice to think about and from that perspective of this is home. And it may be this is home for right now, or maybe this is home for the future, or maybe it's the home for our kids. But I think that that's a perspective that will likely influence a lot of people here. Is that this is our home. It's not just where we live. And the things that make it our home are the things that might be bringing us here today. Do others find that sort of concept of thinking of Panton, the community as home, help to motivate your participation today? And what sort of other characteristics of home, if you will, lend itself to encouraging your participation? And I think I may have seen a switch.
For me.
Yeah, what makes Panton home for you?
Is the beauty of this area. Very important.
I was just on our break, took a little step outside to the porch and took in a lovely view shed. It really is a nice area, and I certainly appreciate it. Unfortunately, I've been coming by most of the night evenings lately, so the view is a little bit different when it's after 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
So it's my.
I'll point you in the right roads to drive around.
Very good.
Not the right road, just the one.
Who else? Motivations, please.
No,
Oh.
I want to go, but that's fine,
It's okay.
it's home, and the kids want to stay here, that's where they both do, and one's down in Rutland, and she'd like to come back up. We'll come on, they want to.
It's home and you want,
They,
and you'd like for it to feel home for future generations as well. And so crafting what that looks like so that it facilitates that future, kids and grandkids and, all of those.
great,
And you want it to be the type of place where the grandkids want to be. Okay? What is that place? Right, what you have, the natural beauty, the outdoor experience.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
You see the tractors from. And you see cows, and you see next door, now we have books. And big,
What was that?
we have the vineyard.
Oh, the vineyard.
What else in this conversation? What makes Panton home to you?
or if that metaphor might be a little used at this point, you know, why are you here? What motivated you?
I would say community.
Yeah.
I would say the small town feel, everyone turns into family. And it's a village, it's literally a village. You can turn to your neighbor and be like, hey, I need help moving this, can you help me today? Versus, you're not gonna get that out in the city where you don't know this. So it's just a small town feel that you can learn who your neighbor is and get to know them better, and I mean, we own PJ's Farm Supply, and everyone feels like a family when they come in there. And that's super important to us, at least.
I agree, that sense of family, beyond the immediate, certainly does conjure the notion of home, and extended family. Closeness. I sense that a volunteerism perspective could be really handy as well when thinking about the scale of this community and what sort of solutions and approaches that we would like to explore for pursuing the future, whether it's for energy or recreation and housing. And so how we think about this home, how we think about this community, how we show up for it, if you will, could be a really interesting thing to tease out more as we go to think about not just our ideal Panton of the future, but how we get there. Thank you folks for engaging. And I know those why questions are sometimes kind of hard or maybe seem indirectly related, but they do help to drill down into sort of what gets us to this conversation. And I think we've revealed some shared characteristics as well. So next, I would like to focus our conversation in a bit more specifically on energy related topics. And I know we've sort of thought about what makes Panton the way it is today, and a little bit about what makes Panton of the future, right? Preserving the community feel that it has, while also thinking about what changes might need to be made. But I would like to drill down to that from an energy perspective. So when we think about energy generation or energy use in the Panton community, how would folks describe that if they were? How do you use energy here? How do you see it being generated? How would you describe the energy of this community? Any takers? Please, Amy.
So, I'd like the thought of Panton being able to be self-sufficient from an energy perspective to the extent possible. So, but with a caveat, I think there's lots of opportunity to do that on a very small scale. On my rooftop, I've got 10 acres, I can have solar panel in my backyard. I'm really not happy to see acres and acres of potential of land that could be used for other purposes restricted because they have a solar panel or some other restriction to generate energy.
Do you think that the Panton energy system today reflects those interests that you have, that it can be a self-sufficient community while also perhaps having a right-sized version of what is cited within the community? Do you think that's currently reflected?
I think it's probably work with people who are here to support some of that for incentives that allow people, which I think the electricity costs are very high anyway. So if we can almost ways that people can generate some of their own process.
Sure. And I think that the notion of having more self-sufficient residences does have sort of a stacking effect that if we work to make our residences and commercial spaces more self-sufficient from an energy perspective, that makes the community at large more self-sufficient, so that we don't necessarily have to have, one big feature of the community, but little tiny cooperative elements of the community. And I think that that is an interesting approach as well, because it lends itself to being very considerate of your community and your neighbors and what impacts take place in your neighborhood as well.
I saw that in the survey results, when people thinking about communities and rooftop. That's like, I don't know, one thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that either. I think you're a good company. Actually. And it's interesting that you mentioned this, because one of the projects that the RPC has been working on is the design of a solar canopy map, as well as attempting to develop generation potential from solar canopy style installations, meaning like imagine a carport, for example, in your driveway. But rather than it just having shingle on the top, having or metal having solars. And from some of the early results that I've seen, actually from the group that's helping us with that, actually there's quite a bit of innovation on this. So it is both, I think, conceptually sound in addition to being so that would probably be I thought
Not me.
and then well, so I wish that that were the case, and it really depends on the agreement. Will the energy be used here locally? So for many residential scale, whether it's solar or wind, energy generating facilities, if they're attached to people's homes, often they're engaged in metering, which means that the electricity that is beyond how much they use is supplied back to the grid. And that would not be used locally, the excess. But before the net median between the two, that would be used on site to power local electricity demand. There are some facilities, usually a little on the larger side, that use power purchasing agreements, but maybe we're getting a little bit too into the weeds. The short answer is, for smaller scale facilities, often the electricity is used more locally. For larger scale facilities, usually it's supplied back to the grid for sale within the New England grid system. Yes.
Yeah, I keep seeing lots of other countries, with really progressive looking solar installations. They're not just these big slabs. And, one of the things that I keep seeing are these floating solar fields. They found whatever, they make like a football field size, solar installation, but it floats, like they could use out here on the lake, have they looked at anything like that?
To my knowledge, we have not explored floating solar. I think that it is a type of use for solar that would likely experience some natural resource and recreation type challenges, as we have folks who would want to see that our river as well as lake communities wouldn't be damaged by such an installation, as well as would like to maintain recreation access to it. It is an approach that I have seen, and is lower profile than offshore wind, for example. But anytime you try to do something in a water environment, it has pretty rough impacts on the infrastructure that you create. And so my initial instinct would be that unless it's like such a large scale project that it could justify that increased operations and maintenance costs, that water-based might not be the best fit for smaller scale, but it's certainly something that's worth looking into, and I am thoroughly potentially incorrect. So it's never bad to have multiple approaches to solving a problem.
talking about road services.
Okay.
I've read it and in Europe or other places that, there is some use of initial exploration of road services. So
As in the, part that you drive on and, those big solar panels. It would be quite an engineering challenge in part because, but you know, these are the types of things where if there's a case, if there's an example, you know, it's certainly not a bad idea to consider. And perhaps there are some niche settings in which, that could be deployed. It certainly keeps a little bit better with regard to, you know, no billboards, you know, limiting visual impacts. So there could be some advantages, in a, you know, low traffic or lightweight, you know, setting where there's a lot of visual, potential impact. But again, it may be possible, but I do think we've got some other approaches that, could be more effective, but certainly worth looking into. I've got it written down because I haven't bought road services. Thank you.
and also when we're talking about canopies, we're referring to, I think,
It is, there's a new sign that says Simmons.
Yeah.
It could be parking lots, it could be, say you've got a storage shed that isn't getting hauled in, it sort of blurs the line between rooftop and it's perhaps thought of as non-traditional rooftop is another way to look at it. The way I look at it is how do I shovel less snow in my driveway? Which is if you put panels over it, you get a little bit of electricity and you have to do a little bit less of that. But again, as I mentioned, I grew up in Arkansas, so avoiding the snow shoveling is, you know, a little high on my list. Yes.
Yeah, I think, Sharon, and then people from Minnesota, in Netherlands, it's not the roads, it's the biking. I was in biking, that is actually South Shore. And I think they had a pretty good.
Well, because biking as alternative vehicle transport into the energy solution, as well as getting solar panels over the trails that they use. So that is code generation boost. That's an interesting solution as well.
Enjoy, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so here's one that I saw this morning. Germany converts its entire Autobahn into a solar energy corridor. And they have completely,
Oh, really?
yeah, on each side of the highway is also. Well, like, I mean, it's interesting, everybody also. And how this work. That is my concern, that the landscape disappears, and then we don't have anything left.
And that came through in the surveys, the third most important issue after affordability and reliability. So, again, you're in a good spot. Danelle, I'm seeing that my time is, oh, you're raising your hand. Please. Please, yeah.
There was a discussion.
And I will likely have.
Look at how the resources again, I feel like we really covered a lot more. But what I wanted to say from Thursday's meeting, there's a conversation about what a commercial rooftop solar would look like. And I think it was brought up and we mentioned, we have all these barns. You know, so many barns, so many roofs, very good community, good roof, solar on top. But I'm just saying, you know, that could be, you know, what is commercial roof on it? What we were talking about.
It's a scale question.
And we talked about the fact that the Panton Works building does have solar and that's considered. So I just wanted to mention that as a kind of a conversation.
A good
that
case.
on Thursday.
Yeah, certainly a good case that you can have larger scale, larger. Not exactly huge, but larger scale, commercial scale facilities on top of roofs and still generate quite a bit of energy from them.
Thank you all so much for reflecting on the types of considerations that you would like to see for Panton's energy future. For the sake of time, but to note that there is a very important question of not just what should our energy future look like, but where that energy future will take place. One of the important considerations of the energy plan development is the mapping element. And so in Panton's current energy plan, they have a preferred locations map that indicates to those who read Panton's energy plan that the area that is considered a preferred location in the town of Panton for energy development is here on Sling Road. And it is my understanding that this sort of conversation and this location over time has evolved. And that's probably the simplest way to put it. Yes.
What defines a preferred location? How do these maps get produced with these preferred energy sites?
So these are, this is a municipally designated. So the last time that an enhanced energy plan was written for Panton, it was designated from within this community
this is
as
current.
where, yes, this is for the
Current, yes,
right.
okay.
But again, this has sort of emerged as a conflictual element of the plan, and one that ultimately we may choose to revisit as we develop a new one. And so, we're likely not going to have time for it today, unfortunately. But what I would like for folks to take a look at when they have time and to reach out to me at that moment as well. There is
Is that the one you wanted?
yes. But one more up at the top. We can sacrifice maybe this one.
That's fine. Oh, I broke that one. Thank you.
We have generated a new set of maps for Panton that attempt to reflect on where, if we put all of the possible constraints on a map, and then we looked at the areas in between where there wasn't evidence of something that would constrain energy development in the area, at least from a state planning perspective, right? And we stripped away all of the layers that indicate where planning maybe would say, don't put a new energy resource there. And you leave behind only the areas where, in theory, it would be a good idea for energy development. This is the map that gets produced. Now, it's not a final map per se in terms of indicating a preferred location, but these are the types of maps that we at least like to lead with in the conversation and say, in theory, if these are the parcels that would be best suited, according to the state maps, for energy development, this is a good starting place. Because then what we can do is we can take a look at each one and say, well, I've lived down this street for decades, and I actually know what's there, and what is mapped is not very hospitable. And so this will be an evolving conversation. We are in the process of setting up a working group to address the energy planning for the Panton town plan more specifically. It's a bit complicated and it will take us some time. And so that's why we wanted to have its own group to address it. But I want to start priming the pump for this conversation because I know that it's a challenging one. And it's certainly one that's not decided, right? It's not a closed question, but it is one that we're going to want to talk about moving forward. And so if there are folks that have a question about it today that would like to talk to me about it further, that's fine. If we want to set up additional time to meet, that's also fine. If you want to help serve on the working group on the energy plan specifically, that is also acceptable. So again, we want this to be a nice democratic decision that gets made, and thinking intuitively about where in theory we would like energy development of the future to take place, where we would prefer that. Is a part of this conversation. So I think at this point, I've really taken far more time than is fair for my topic, but it's a complicated one. So I wanted to, take my license, take my inch and turn it into a mile. So thank you all for listening to what I've said about energy thus far. Logan, do you want to say a quick note or two?
Yeah, definitely interested in working group. Awesome.
Great.
Logan's the representative from the planning commission that will be working with Joel. Thank you.
If y'all have a neighbor that's really passionate about energy issues, or can think of anyone else who would be really helpful to having this conversation, please snowball that out. Let them know that we're looking for additional perspective on this topic. Again, happy to cast the net far and wide in terms of getting feedback here. So, great.
And before we let you go home, we'll talk about more homes, or less, or whatever. Since I rudely interrupted your statements before, not understanding, not the same what you were doing, said, want to bring it back to housing. We know it's a crisis in the state. It's another state priority. The state has created housing goals for the county. Also, we then disaggregated them down and we have them for towns. This is something in our regional plan. Bigger conversation. But the state has the hefty goals for the state, for the communities to produce housing. Aspirational. Let's go with that. So I just want to touch upon it, because again, it was a rising thing. Maybe not everyone agrees, but if you want your kids to live closer or those generations to come, they might not be able to afford what might be available. Because you have some amazing properties in this community. And so again, what does that look like for the future? We talked about possible zoning changes, and that's still going to be an interesting conversation. But what else does that mean to you? What else when you say housing and Pan, what do you think? Go.
My mind already understood.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
It's over 30 years.
Mhm.
It's program business species.
Yeah, sure.
Do they do that use?
Yeah.
You keep that as a family.
Yeah. You have so many great land stewards in this community, but that's a good example. Absolutely. And there's so many long 10-acre lots. They're called spaghetti lots, because minimum zoning was 10 acres. And you had to have, maybe there was that minimum road frontage, so they just were like. So you have these, you're not super close to your neighbors, it's still 10 acres. But you have a lot of unusual land, or maybe you have someone farming that whole back, like the back 8 or something like that. And some areas are like that. And so I could go down the rabbit hole, but there's the conversation of we have these big acres. That was a lot. Even in the 80s, that could have been a lot. Right now it's a lot. How do we make that accessible for more people as far as just being able to be homeowners, landowners? And again, that's your kids. That's your kids that are trying to get out of the city because they're living there. And a lot of folks, they leave, they come back, or they never left at all, but they still want to put roots down. So what other things come up as advantages, disadvantages, unintended consequences?
Well, some of the things that they're not thinking about with this housing issue is, they have to do the due diligence to see if the land is gonna support a house. As far as a lot of this land here will not perk. You cannot put a wastewater system on it due to the water table.
Yep.
And that's a problem in Panton.
Absolutely. Yep.
So they need to look at that, like this strip over here, I don't even know if they can put in.
We don't know. But technology could change, and that's the only hope.
How can they say they're gonna put housing there when they don't do that due diligence first? You have to do that first.
Well, I see what you're saying, and that there's a lot that I could share about that, and we could talk about it in detail. But yeah, we recognize that infrastructure is not only a huge cost barrier, but we have very dense clay soils in a lot of Addison County, which makes a single family home with 3 bedrooms, a $45,000 mound system. And that I feel like is being kind at this point. That's huge. That is huge. And that's not your foundation, your land, your road, your electric, all that stuff for building new. But yeah, so there's parcels that the due diligence wouldn't come on the mapping end of it. The due diligence would come on someone's personal time and effort. And hopefully there'll be advancements in septic so that we aren't struggling with these such expensive mound systems of having these berms in all the yards. So, Jamie.
I was looking at your example of the cluster housing. I'm thinking the cluster housing, but with really maybe 50 acres around it.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to keep the open land, so you could farm or something else. But you could have the wastewater, that would be sufficient land to
Yeah.
support the wastewater. I'm not getting.
You can always make it work very often you can make it work sometimes. Another kind of rural community I'm gonna refer to is another co-housing, again, not everyone's cup of tea, but Charlotte has one, kind of across on, I wanna say it's on Lake Road, it's kind of near, the street, it's on Green Bush. I wanna say it's near the Charlotte, the rural. But you can't even see it. All of a sudden, there's a sign, there's a private road, you go down there, they got a barn, they got community farms, or they got community, gardens, all this stuff. Again, it's a lifestyle you have to choose. But it's exactly that. It's on probably 100 acres, and there's so many stewards of the land, but at the end of the day, they just want to be able to run to their neighbors for a cup of coffee or have their kids go over to their new aunt's house because so-and-so had a doctor's appointment. There's that kind of.
That's the both worlds.
Exactly. It's that.
We're living rurally.
Yeah, it's the village that we were talking about before. You're creating that village and everyone. So. Yeah, so again, it doesn't have to be something on 2 acres. It could be something on 50 acres. Again, we wanted to still focus on that conserved and that rural lifestyle. So, what else do we think about when we think of housing in Panton? Do we want it? Do we not? I guess is the question. The one question was, okay, the one piece was pushing the zoning, focusing with denser housing on the Virgin's border. We're going to talk about the border that we know as existence. And the conversation was going all the way up to BJ's and making that maybe a higher density and maybe that was just a conversation going up to Basin Harbor Road with some sort of, we talked about the planned growth area when we're talking about some of these other land use conversations, which are rather below, I won't go down right now. But you kind of maybe developing that a little bit more, get a little bit more industry or housing in Panton and going up to your area. I'm using that as an example so that you could only grow to serve it.
Municipalities categories is mighty short of energy, where we've inquired about solar many times, but because my deed says commercial, nobody, the conversation ends. I want to put solar panels on my roof. Oh, I put all this energy efficient stuff, ripped all my fluorescents out. My power bill for 10 years has been $500 in the winter, $1,000 in the summer. After doing all the upgrades, new furnaces, new air compressors, new lights, all the things, my power bill is between 500. Things are going up. Everything's getting more efficient. Doesn't change your bill at all. Putting solar panels on my dime wouldn't do anything for you. Back whatever years ago, the company would pay you 90% of the value of a kilowatt. Now it's what, 10% of a kilowatt? You buy for $1, sell it for 10 cents. There's no logic there. Cheap energy. Nobody's gonna put a solar panel on for $100 so you can buy a gallon of propane for housing. I don't. If it takes, nobody's house in here is less than 300,000 a day. My father built my store for $80,000. I'm putting an addition on for twice that. An addition. There's nothing cheap about anything anymore. So all of these, like you said, mount system went from 30,000, stupid money. Now you can't build one for 100. There's no getting ahead with that kind of numbers on any of these things.
From a real estate perspective with solar, I would always say, like, oh, solar gonna add value to my house. I'm thinking about real estate broker. People are like, oh, I got some solar on, that changes the value of my house. And I'm like, well, pay off. And even if it's paid off, that's just showing you invested into it, but it doesn't mean that. Well, first of all, if you go into it and you're paying a loan for it, it's a wash. It's just about choosing which energy you want. It's not, you're still paying $100 a month instead of paying $100 for energy off.
no joy in my change, but I think about that kind of perspective where all this is you're spending the same amount of money, but you're choosing a different path for it. And so, but people are like, oh, I'm gonna put it on immediately, what's my house worth now? And I'm like, it doesn't just automatically go up by the 40,000 you spent. So it is that kind of, again, sometimes it's a little more feel good than it is about cost effectiveness, which not all of us have to profits to make things cost effective. Sorry, whichever one, you go first. Yeah, you're allowed to go first, Sharon, she gave you permission.
Just a comment about the 30 units that they've assigned to Panton. I'm not sure how realistic that is. We don't have anything here, we don't have industry that people move here to be a part of, so that's a problem. I don't think I've seen 30 houses built in Panton in 30 years. So I don't know what they're thinking.
Again, aspirational, that's all math, it's all statistics, it's all French. You know, and then we had to take it, and all we did was, as a county regional plan, we took those guidelines and then said, this many percentage of houses in the county, and it was just basic percentage. Aspirational, something to work towards. If say we currently get 5 a year, 7 or 8 a year might be winning, you know, just giving out an example. I don't know what permits for. So we're not looking into all of that when I'm writing the housing and the economy, economic. Words are done. I'm officially going with all my words. I get my quote. The economy section, the housing section. So these are all things that we're going to be talking about as we move forward those chapters. So again, I don't want to limit us to housing or, oh, sorry, you're next.
I just want to say, maybe I'm not considering this, but for a long time, Greenhouse Power, who we all know, they asked the state for 7% and they know they'll be 4%, and that sort of thing. It keeps going up repeatedly on the news. There is this energy efficiency Vermont, I think it's called, that's in somehow related to GMP. Maybe I'm wrong right here, but they have little kids come on TV saying, oh, you know, I'm doing this great for energy efficiency. And it sort of is insinuating that if you don't jump on board, you're not, you know, there's something wrong here. I fail to see where GMP is saying, we will give you help to install solar panels or solar this, but when you look at mine, you have to output $2,000 into getting either something, what do they call those, not heat pumps, but, you know, for people on a limited income, that's a lot. It seems like there's a real discrepancy between you have to do energy efficiency or you're, you know, not good. And there's really a cost to this that a lot of folks can't output at first.
Sure.
So even though you might want to have, a heat pump in your cellar and solar panels, there's that thousands of dollars initially, you know. So maybe I'm not understanding something. I don't mean to.
No, I think you understand the situation quite well, truth be told. These are very capital intensive projects. They can have significantly lower fuel and maintenance costs based off of the way that they operate, but the upfront expenditure for solar panels or heat pumps is still significant. They are absolutely trying to persuade everyone that they can to adopt heat pumps and EVs, another instance of a upfront capital cost that is higher. That being said, I love my plug-in Prius. You know, it's like really cool. I get 99 miles to the gallon on that thing, and that's like in Vermont winters going up and down these hills. You know, there are very real energy efficiencies that can be pursued. But to your point, the electricity cost is going up. I think many of us are also conscious of what's going on in the Gulf right now and how that's increasing the price of fossil fuels too. I saw a statistic that said that fuel oil costs pre and post this event have gone up by 30% in the United States. And a 30% increase in the price of fuel oil in a period of a month is going to manifest itself in people's bills just as much as changes to electrical prices as well. But it always does come down to the economics, right? And to the extent that I wrote down for needing to have programs that appropriately fund the right element of these upfront capital costs. It's very expensive to make a fuel switch decision, but once it has been made, that's when the payoff starts being pursued. And so I think my takeaway is that generally speaking, the positive benefits of electrification, economic and beyond, are still positive, but there are real barriers to implementing them that shouldn't exist, because we know that they benefit not just ourselves, but the community at large. So teasing out what those benefits or what those programs ought to be is a part of what goes into the energy plan development. And while what we can do at the local scale might be a bit more limited, it certainly should be included. And as we noted from the survey, affordability was the primary concern when it comes to energy use in this community. And it is across the state as well. So this is not like an unfounded or, you know, an outsider position to have. Things should be, especially basic necessities like being able to heat one's home, being able to get to work and doctor's appointments, being able to turn the lights on when you need them. These are core necessities in our society at this point, and you can't really do too much of anything without using energy. So making sure that it's accessible and affordable are always going to be key elements of consideration.
Okay.
And it should be for housing too, but I talk about energy, so.
So as we approach the end, just want to tell you about next steps. A lot of words that you can't see probably. So just want you to know, the Planning Commission will be continuing to meet on this every month. So lucky them, they get to see mine every month, sometimes it. That working group will also be forming, that's really important. That is more of an ad hoc group. It's not a open meeting style. It's not a public meeting style, correct? It's just it's a consulting group. You're not morning meetings. The working group, yeah. That is yes, exactly. That is a casual. I know it wasn't at the end of the formal summary.
Rules.
Thank you. Yes, we'll go with that. And each month, I do have a calendar that I might put out there. There's a whole bunch of topics. Currently, your plan has like 17 or 19 chapters. There might be thoughts about condensing some and just kind of streamlining some things. But at the end of the day, these are all the topics. Talk about vision, we're going to talk about our community engagement. But then, I don't have to rewrite the history. You guys already have a great plan. I'm here to update it. So history, population, housing, economy, education, communities, facilities, transportation, recreation. It's everything in your town that we want to kind of outline and tout, and if there's things to plan for. So we will include what's going to be on the agenda. We're going to include what chapters will be discussed on the Planning Commission agendas. I have a plan in my brain. Jamie wanted me to present it. I said, that's really fluid because it's going to depend on a lot of variables. So, but the agenda will be what will be being talked about that Thursday meeting. My goal is to be updating chapters, sending them to the Planning Commission a week in advance, kind of like a red line update thing. And we're going to talk about those changes and we're going to talk about that and see if that works. And then we're just going to continue to do that every meeting until we feel good about things and ready to move forward. And again, public hearings, select board has their say in it too. It's not over until it's fully adopted. So
What's the deadline?
I don't have a deadline. We're going to try to get done by the end of the year, at least get all the working, we maybe start hearing it towards the end of the year, but we'd like to get it done in a year just to make sure that you guys have everything ready to go and we're not hitting a deadline. We have until technically 2027, so not too far away anyway.
2027?
I think it's September.
September of 2027.
I believe so, yes, because I believe your adoption date is November something, 2019. Yes. Yep.
But I really want to take the
Yeah.
We want to spend that money.
And a lot of the funding is actually, his funding expires at the end of the year. So again, we're trying to make sure that, because his funding is actually coming out of a different pot of money. So we want to make sure that again, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that we have to work through as far as when funding expires, et cetera, to work on different projects. So, but that's it. I would look forward to seeing all of you at every planning commission meeting moving forward, right? And your families and friends. Hold on, baby.
You. Meeting was on the business.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you. All of this, I'm gonna be putting together my notes and